All right, so welcome. If more people pop in, that's fine. But welcome to tonight's session. This is called May I Have Your Attention, Please? It is a workshop session over writing thesis statements. So my name's Kristen Sloan, and I'm a writing tutor with the Ally Center. This is the first workshop I've done. I'm new. I just started in December. I'm not new to education, but I'm new to the Ally Center. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen with you. And then I will pull up my PowerPoint here and we will just jump right in. So if anybody else pops in, we'll just let them know where we're at. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Let me go back. So again, the title of this is Writing Thesis Statements That Your Professors Will Notice. And I'm going to start us out just with a little fun reflection here. What's one word that you could choose to best describe you or your life right now? You can write it in the chat. You can come on audio and say it, whatever you want to do. One word that would describe you or your life right now.
I'll say excited.
Excited.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, we've got one in the chat. Let's see. Busy. Yes, yes, busy. I hear you. As you're in the car, right? You're multitasking there, Patricia. So what's one word that you could choose to best describe what you know of or have experience regarding writing thesis statements? So a lot of experience, none, a little bit. What word would you choose? Oops, sorry about that. My chat disappeared. There we go. Okay, let's see here. Confused. Okay, totally normal. Totally normal feeling.
I don't have
You're,
one word. I would say just a work in progress.
yeah, work in progress. Yeah. And you're going to find that you are on a spectrum, like some classes you'll feel really comfortable with it, and other classes that maybe you aren't feeling as confident in the topic or the style of essay, you might think like, I don't know about this. So you'll kind of see a spectrum, but hopefully at the end of tonight, you'll feel better. You'll feel more confident about what is a thesis statement, how do I write one, what's required in a thesis statement. Um, I never seem to make it strong enough. Okay, yeah, flip-flop essay. Well, in the flip-flop essay, that is a challenging assignment, right? Isn't that the one where you have to argue the position that you don't hold? Yeah, that's tricky, right? That's hard. The good news is you do that first, right? The hard part first, so that when you go to write the actual argument essay, when you are arguing how you feel, it feels a little bit more natural. So, kind of, I don't know, good news, reassurance there, hopefully. Um, but tonight we are going, there we go. We're going to focus on developing your thesis statement skills in order to construct an arguable thesis. And so the keys here are that you're gonna know how to do this using effective style and using well-chosen details, because that's the key to a thesis statement, is having just specifically well-chosen details. So there's four key things we're gonna go over tonight. First, we're gonna define what a thesis statement is. What's the purpose of a thesis statement? And then we will look at the parts of an argumentative thesis statement, okay, because you're doing that for this argument essay for LAN 100. And this is specifically geared for you guys in LAN 100 and LAN 101. So take heart. And then you'll learn how to craft effective thesis statements. So I'll walk you through an example topic and show you kind of by modeling the thinking process, how you can go from a topic to an opinion and then end up with a thesis statement that's arguable and that's clear, because that's ultimately what our goal here is. Okay, an arguable, clear thesis statement. So it's kind of a fourfold goal tonight. So we'll start out by talking about what is a thesis statement. Very, very fascinating here. So if you've ever tried driving somewhere without a map, this is kind of how I relate a thesis statement to students whenever I've taught or whenever I'm tutoring. If you try to go somewhere without a map or without directions, you're probably going to get lost. Okay. I know when I've done it, I've gotten lost. So a thesis statement then is kind of the key. It's the map that guides your readers through all the twists and the turns of your writing. Without it, without your thesis statement, your reader they're lost. They don't know where you're going, and they really don't know like what's the whole point of this essay. So the thesis statement is that one statement that tells them, here's what you're getting ready to read. Okay, here's my main point. So without it, readers can get lost. And when they get lost, then they don't understand the point that you're trying to make in your essay. Okay. And we obviously want them to understand our point. We don't want them to be lost. All right, let me move you over here. Let me moving you back and forth. So the thesis statement there's a five-fold purpose if we had to boil it down. The first thing your thesis statement does is it's going to clearly identify your main point or your argument. So for Land 101, it's going to be identifying your argument. Okay, that's first and foremost what it's doing. Second characteristic, and this is so funny to me because I've taught all levels of students, but my high school students especially, they're always shocked when I tell them it's a thesis statement. That means one sentence. We don't need to have a paragraph. We don't need to have a thesis, essay. It's just one sentence. And so that's kind of the beauty of it. Makes it hard, but it also makes it easy, kind of both at the same time. Another thing, and this is, you might see some, not differences, but depending on your professor, for the most of the time, they'll have you put your thesis statement. They'll make it the last sentence in your introduction. Sometimes you'll have professors that'll allow you to just kind of slide it into the middle of your intro somewhere, but for the most part, it's the last sentence in your introduction. And really the thesis statement, it's the glue that holds your entire essay together. And again, like I said earlier, it's your roadmap. So five-fold process here for your thesis statement. You will hear all of your professors talk about a thesis statement and give you these five kind of purposes or characteristics. Now, is this different from what you've heard before? Is that kind of familiar to you guys when you've heard of thesis statements?
I actually attended the last subterm a thesis statement workshop. I think it may have been Professor Burkert. I don't know. But
Okay, yeah.
I wanted to make sure I hyped on because I feel like all of the workshops I either miss or it's like at a time that I can't make it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna attend at least one.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad you did. Yeah. Like I said, you'll learn lots of information here tonight.
Yeah,
So
and it was several weeks ago, so I'm sure I'm still gonna, like you said, learn things that I didn't know before. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Okay. So let's jump in here to the nuts and bolts. I'm not sure why my slide is not advancing when I click my advance button, but there we go. Okay. So the thesis statement, what is the point? Okay. So again, ultimately, your thesis statement gives your writing structure and it serves as a framework for your argument. But again, the most important thing your thesis statement does is it helps your reader follow your train of thought. As you walk them from here's my opinion, here's why I feel the way I do, and then in the body, you walk them through giving evidence and reasons why you feel the way you do. That thesis statement is going to provide them with kind of like a roadmap. I mean, for lack of a better term, you're going to hear me say roadmap a lot, but it's just that map for them. It helps them follow your train of thought through your writing. Okay. So, whoops, sorry about that. I told you this is my first time doing this. Okay, so the thesis statement, it articulates your essay's central argument. It condenses your main takeaway. It helps readers see the paper's focus and the purpose, and it makes a claim about the text. So it's just the backbone of your paper. And ultimately, it opens space for argument and debate in your essay. Now, if we look at the essay types, you're going to see different types of essays throughout the course of, there we go. I can move that. See, first time doing this, I figured out how to work that Zoom. Okay, essay type. So again, depending on the type of essay you're writing, your thesis statement is going to serve different purposes. So, excuse me, you might have a professor that assigns an expository essay. You might have an argumentative essay assignment. You might have a descriptive essay or a narrative essay. And again, depending on the type of essay, the purpose of the thesis statement is going to vary. So for Land 100 and Land 101, specifically Land 101, the argumentative essay is what we're going to focus on. And so the purpose of an argumentative essay thesis is to persuade the reader and to state a claim and give reasons why you feel the way you do about whatever the topic is. So again, argumentative and or persuasive, that's what we're looking at here for Land 101. So you started with the flip-flop essay. Sorry guys. Resize window. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do here. There we go. So you started with the flip-flop essay, and that is going to transition into a full argument essay later in the course. Okay, so this means that because it's an argument essay, your thesis statement, it's going to have two characteristics and that are unique to the fact that this is an argument. The first characteristic your thesis statement is going to have is that it's debatable. And the second characteristic is that it's narrow. So I took these. This is from, are you guys familiar with the Purdue OWL? Have you guys used that at all for your classes? Maybe. Oops. Sorry about that.
We have.
So, okay. Some of you have. Okay. So the Purdue OWL, again, wonderful. But from the Purdue OWL, they say the thesis must be something that people could reasonably have differing opinions on. So if your thesis is something that's generally agreed upon or it's accepted as fact, like the sky is blue because it reflects water from the ocean or vice versa, right? That's not debatable, okay? That's a fact. There's no reason to try to persuade people. So first characteristic, it has to be debatable. And then second, it needs to be narrow. So the narrower the thesis, the more effective your argument will be. And I'll show you kind of what I mean about narrow versus broad, debatable versus non-debatable. So here's a couple examples here, and I'm gonna make you guys appear again so that we can look at these together. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Okay, let's move you guys over here. Someday I'll figure this out, right? Okay. So non-debatable versus debatable. So a non-debatable thesis statement would be pollution is bad for the environment. Okay. Some of you might say, well, why is that non-debatable? Can't it be argued that pollution is okay for the environment? Well, no, because first that word pollution kind of implies that there's something bad or negative in some way, shape, or form. Furthermore, if you looked at studies on pollution, you'd see that pollution is a problem, no matter what kind or where. Really, the argument is just that they disagree on the impact it will have. Okay, that's the debate. It's not that pollution is bad. It's what is the impact of pollution. So no one would reasonably or could reasonably argue that pollution is overall a good thing. An example of a debatable thesis: at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. So you can see how we've gone from very broad, okay, pollution is bad for the environment. That's not debatable. And we've narrowed it down and said at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. So that's an example of a debatable thesis. And it's because people could disagree on it, right? Some people might say, no, 75% of the budget should be spent on pollution, on limiting pollution. Others might feel that we should be spending less, okay? Or that we should be spending that money on education. So the debates could go on and on here with this second example of a thesis statement. So do you see, is that obvious kind of why that's debatable versus non-debatable? You kind of have that general pollution is bad versus no, 25% of this. So it's very specific versus broad. So that's a great example of debatable versus non-debatable. Now, if we look at some other examples here, here's an example of a non-debatable thesis statement. Smoking can cause health problems. Okay, that is a fact. It has been studied. It can cause health problems. A debatable thesis statement: the government should ban smoking altogether. Okay, people can debate on that, right? There's an argument that could be had there. Non-debatable, small cars get better fuel mileage than 4x4 pickup trucks. That's a fact. Again, they just do. Debatable, the government should ban 4x4 pickup trucks except for work-related use. So do you see that key word in those two debatable examples I've given so far? It's that word should, right? When you see that word, you kind of like go, oh, that might be something we can debate. All right, third example, non-debatable. On average, people with college degrees earn more money in the workplace. Okay, again, that's a fact. It's just, they've studied it. It's what they consistently see across the board. Okay, debatable. A college degree should not be required for insert whatever profession you're studying. Non-debatable. Foul language is common in movies. Again, it just is. It's a fact. You can witness it in almost any movie that you watch. A debatable topic or a debatable thesis. The amount of foul language in movies is disproportionate to the amount of foul language in real life. So do you see how the non-debatable thesis statements aren't really, there's not an argument there, right? The debatable ones, you've got like a specific should do this or should be that. Okay, that's kind of the key there between, or how you can decipher between debatable and non-debatable. All right, so the second characteristic, we said that the first one was that thesis statements are debatable. Second characteristic, they are narrow. So let's look at some broad versus narrow thesis statements. All right, so too broad, at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. Okay, so that was our example from earlier. We've made that thesis statement debatable, but now we can narrow it down a little bit, okay? The reason it's too broad is that the category is too big. The specific ways that we should spend money aren't clear. And the author also isn't clear about the definition of pollution, okay? There's just really too many questions that this claim leaves open to interpretation. The author, like in a, let's say a 5-page essay, the author couldn't cover all of these topics. But because it's so general, it leaves them all open to debate. So the author it's too broad and it needs to be narrowed down. So if we looked at that thesis and narrowed it, we could say at least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on helping upgrade business to clean technologies, researching renewable energy sources, and planting more trees in order to control or eliminate pollution. So this thesis statement, it really kind of narrows that scope of the argument by specifying, first of all, not just the amount of money that should be used, but also how that money could be used to help control pollution. So broad versus narrow, right? Debatable versus non-debatable. All right, we're going to have a quiz. This is informal, by the way. Okay. Here is your first quiz question. Let me make you guys smaller here. Okay. You don't have to answer this in the chat because I'm going to tell you the answer in a minute. The amount of financial aid available to students should be in proportion to the earning potential of the career fields of their college major. So think about that for a second. Think about what we talked about. Is this debatable or is it non-debatable? I'm going to tell you here in just a minute. All right, you ready for this answer? It is debatable, okay? That should in there is your key word, okay? The amount of financial aid should be in proportion to the amount of money that has the potential to be earned in that field. That's debatable. All right, our next example. Lancaster Bible College should make coffee available to students in every building. Debatable or non-debatable? I'll give you a second to think. You might be surprised about this one. All right. This one's debatable, but I say it's non-debatable, right? If you like coffee like I do, it should just be available. Okay. Next. Driving under the influence of alcohol is dangerous. Debatable or non-debatable? If you said non-debatable, you're right. This is, again, a proven fact. It's dangerous to drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs, for that matter. Okay, the United States contains citizens of many different ethnicities. Debatable or non-debatable? All right, this is a no-brainer. This is non-debatable. It is just a fact, right? That's how our nation was was formed. We are a country of many different ethnicities. All right, so now that we've covered debatable versus non-debatable and narrow versus broad, we're going to look at how do I get started writing my thesis statement. Okay, that's always the hardest part, but it's always also the first thing I tell my students to do before they start writing their essay, because it gives you a roadmap. Okay, so let me minimize us here again. So there's 7 questions, that you can ask yourself. You guys do this whether or not you realize you do it, okay? Let me just say that. You already do these things. I'm just giving them steps and a name. So 7 questions to ask yourself, and each question is going to get you a step closer to writing that thesis statement that's identifiable, that's arguable, and that will make your professor go, oh, I know what the student's going to write about. So the first step is to choose your topic, right? What is my topic? That's your question you're asking. And then know your audience. And in order to know your audience, you have to know what question led me to research this topic. And then step 3 is to know your position. So what's my claim, right? My claim is my opinion, my stance, okay? Why I feel that way. Step 4 is the why you feel that way. Know why you're taking that position that you've claimed in step 3. Okay, what reasons do I have to support my opinion? And then step 5 is to document your sources. This is the evidence. What evidence do I have that supports the reasons that I've given in my thesis statement? Step 6, excuse me. Now you guys kind of already have done this in this flip-flop essay, but consider the opposition, okay? What objections or what alternate views exist on my topic? That's important for you to note. And then step 7, respond to that opposition. How do I respond to all of those opposing viewpoints? And these 7 steps will get you, number 1, to writing an effective arguable thesis statement, but also they'll help you kind of outline your argument as a whole so that you can use that information to then begin crafting your essay. So win-win, right? Okay, so let's practice here. I'm going to walk you through and model the steps that you can go through to get an effective thesis statement on paper, okay? Let me look here, I've got a chat. Oh, that's okay. It's okay if you lost signal. I get it. It's all right. We're all doing our best. This is being recorded, by the way. I think I said that at the very beginning. I don't know if everybody was here. So once it's recorded, give me a few days. I'll get it edited down and, make it all pretty. And then we'll post it to our Ally Center YouTube page. And I can send out that link when it's all said and done for you guys. But it's okay if you lost signal. All right, so we're gonna practice crafting a thesis statement together. I'm gonna model the steps to walk through for this. All right, so here's your research question that you've been tasked with. You're interested in this. Here's what you're gonna write about. Does technology bring us closer together or push us further apart? Okay, so that's something you're interested in. You want to look into it more. Your argument, which is your thesis statement, will answer this question, and then you'll support it with 2 or 3 reasons. I like to say 3, right? 3 is a magic number. But that's how we're going to craft a thesis statement, is by answering this question. Okay. There we go. Okay, so in order to craft our thesis statement, we need to first consider both sides of this argument. All right, so here's the 2 varying opinions on the topic. All right, so first, with the rise of technology, lots of people are feeling more connected than ever. So it can help us to connect with our friends and our family from anywhere in the world. Okay, I know I have felt that way before about social media like Facebook, right? It lets me connect with people everywhere. On the other hand, okay, the other viewpoint, some people feel that technology pushes us further apart. It can distract us from spending quality time, face to face with people. It can make us feel more isolated, right? I know I've read before in many articles that we are the most connected yet the most isolated society right now because of technology. So here's both sides of this argument, all right, about technology. And then our next step is I'm going to sit down and I'm going to brainstorm, okay, and think, how do I feel? Which of these sides am I taking? Okay. I'm going to write down reasons I feel the way I do. And then I'm going to discuss it. So maybe I'm physically discussing it with a classmate or somebody in my home or maybe my professor, right? But I'm talking about it with them. I'm getting my thoughts out of my head, right? I don't know about you, but when I say things out loud, it's like I think more clearly. So I'm going to discuss this. And then after I've done all that, brainstormed, I've discussed, I'm going to write down the reasons that I feel the way I do once I've kind of worked through it. Once I've come up with reasons, then I'm going to find evidence. And so this is where the research begins in all of these arguments that you are going to eventually write for different classes. So I've got to start looking at sources. I've got to start finding evidence that supports the reasons that I'm outlining for my argument. If you can't find evidence, it's okay to reconsider some of the reasons you feel the way you do. Okay. A lot of times, if we're having trouble finding evidence for our opinion on something, it's just because maybe our opinion isn't clear, or maybe we are wording it in a way that is not, leading us to evidence for it. And then write down the evidence you find. Okay. And as always, you want to make sure that you're using those trustworthy and reliable sources. Have any of your professors talked to you about the CRAP test? Have you heard that for identifying sources? So I believe that's in another workshop, but it's an acronym that stands for is my source current, relevant, accurate? I can't remember the other letters. There's 2 P's or 2 A's actually. But anyway, it's just about finding trustworthy and reliable sources that are up to date and current and not from like Jim Bob down the road who has a blog, right? That's what finding reliable sources is all about. Okay. So we have brainstormed, we have discussed, we've written down reasons we feel the way we do, we've found evidence that supports our reasons. Now it's time to develop our thesis. So to write our thesis, we have to go back to that original research question, all right? And that original research question is, does technology bring us closer together or does it push us further apart? Okay, so I've researched, I've formed an opinion. Now it's time to write it all in one succinct statement. So let's turn our answer to this question into a statement. Okay, so remember, the question we're answering is, does technology bring us closer together or push us further apart? Okay, so we're going to combine our original answer with the 3 main reasons we feel the way we do that we developed when we were brainstorming. So here's how this might look. Okay, so our answer to this question, or my answer, technology pushes us further apart. All right. Here's 3 reasons I came up with to support that. Okay, first, it keeps us from spending quality times with loved ones. Second, seeing perfect lives online can make us feel insecure. And my third reason is that too much technology makes us less active and more unhealthy. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all that together and I want to write out my argument and my 3 reasons all as one sentence. Okay, so if we go back to our example, okay, here was technology pushes us further apart. Here's the 3 reasons why I said that. Putting it together, this is my working thesis statement. I can say technology pushes us further apart as it keeps us from spending quality time with loved ones. It can make us feel insecure and it can make us less active and more unhealthy. So I've got a workable, arguable thesis statement right now. Okay, but I'm not done, right? I'm never done. I have to revise and make it pretty. In order to do that, in order to make it pretty, right, I've got to realize and remember that I need to maintain a formal style. So the argument essays that you're writing for your college classes, they need to be academic in nature. And so that is what we call a formal style when we are writing persuasively, especially. It's also important to make your thesis very formal because it helps you sound more convincing. And it allows your readers to trust that you are an expert on the topic, even if you're not, right? It lets them know that, look, here's how I feel and why I feel this way. And I've done research and I have evidence that supports my opinions. I'm not just, saying this off the top of my head. I'm actually, I've invested some time and some thought into this opinion. Okay. So, some tips for writing your thesis statements in a formal style. Okay, I'm sure have heard this. Eliminate personal pronouns, right? So I, me, my, mine, all that, you, yours. Now, your professor, they may tell you that personal pronouns are okay. So again, this is kind of a case-by-case basis. In general, overall, we want to eliminate those personal pronouns when we're trying to maintain a formal style. Incorporate expert opinions or scholarly consensus. Okay, so find some experts on your topic that feel the way you do, and use their research or use their information to support your own opinion on the topic. Precise and academic language. This is known as diction. So anytime you hear somebody say use formal diction, it just means formal word choice. Okay, so instead of saying it was very good, right? Let's be more precise and specific when we write that. And then clearly state your opinion. I say this all the time. When you're writing a persuasive essay, there's no reason to say, I think, or I believe, because it's a persuasive essay. Like, we know this is what you think and believe because it's a persuasive essay. So clearly state your opinion, right? Avoid that vague language. Just say it. Just say it. Right? There's no need to be like frilly or fancy. Just say your opinion and give reasons why. Okay, so let's look at when we maintain a formal style. We're going to look at the example below. The original thesis statement is right here on the left, and then our improved thesis statement, which we are, elevating to maintain that formal style, is on the right. So the original says technology pushes us further apart from one another. Sorry, that should say one another, as it keeps us from spending quality time with our loved ones. It can also make us feel insecure or unhappy, and it can make us less active and more unhealthy in the process. Okay, you'll notice that's two sentences. So we're going to revise that and make it one so that it's a true thesis statement. Technology has the potential to create distance between people, impede quality time with loved ones, create feelings of insecurity and unhappiness, and contribute to an inactive and unhealthy lifestyle, as affirmed by experts in the field. So you can see the original thesis, we've changed some of the words, we've elevated the diction, okay? Create distance, impede quality time, create feelings. Right? We've changed from these kind of passive descriptions to these active verbs that really drive home the point that technology pushes us further apart. Okay. So that is kind of the gist of writing effective thesis statements. And so if you look at what we've kind of covered here, you can see that we've talked about the definition and the purpose of a thesis statement. We've talked about how to construct clear and effective arguments. And we've talked about how to maintain that formal style in your writing. So this is where I'm going to open it up to you and kind of answer the questions that you may have about thesis statements in general. Okay, I know, like I said, you're doing this flip-flop essay, and then you're going to kind of turn that into your argument essay for Land 101. So what areas do you have questions about? What can I help you understand? Is there anything that is just not clear for you when it comes to writing thesis statements? You can pick my brain.
Do you have any tips on choosing a topic? So you gave us in your scenario, you gave us the question to answer and to create the thesis, but how did you come up with the question to begin with?
So that's a great question. I always like to start if it's an assignment for a class when I was a student, if my professor kind of gave me parameters, obviously you would start within those parameters. So if they said, well, you need to argue something that's related to current culture, okay, that kind of gives you a guideline. If they're just leaving it wide open and saying, you need to argue something, I would start with something that you are interested in, something that you either have experience with, something you're interested in, something that really captures your attention. For me, like I like sports, but I'm not really, I'm not going to argue anything about sports, just because I don't care that much. But I'm super passionate about um, special needs and disability rights. So, I'm going to look at that area and go, is there something in that area that I can argue for this essay? So that's kind of where I would start is what are you interested in? What captures your attention? Because otherwise it's going to be drudgery, to research and write a topic about a topic that you just don't care about. What else?
Melissa, did you have anything? I don't want to like dominate the conversation.
I think for me, like I picked my topic and I had an overall problem resourcing, like sourcing out.
Right.
And until I got the hang of sourcing, like I met with like Professor Khan like 3 times already and did like some of the workshops and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think it was like sourcing for me because my idea that I wrote, it was women in ministry and leadership.
Okay.
And not
Right.
necessarily just like ministry itself, just like leadership, but
Right.
somehow like I always come back to a biblical stance, right? So when I
Right.
was sourcing out to find sources, I wasn't really getting the why they shouldn't aside of like of the scripture base and scripture being taken out of context and stuff
Yes.
and that so it was like so frustrating in how to even begin to start so
Right.
with having to use so many sources and all of
Yes.
that so that has been my biggest struggle but
Yeah.
then once I start writing, I can't stop. Like I just
Right.
go and I
Right.
write too
Right.
much.
Right.
So I think
Well, and that's
finding that
okay.
balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. So also when it comes to writing, no matter what technique you learn about in a class or whatever, it's important to remember that we all have to make it work with our own process. And so I always tell my students, um, here's kind of the ideal way that I would go about writing an essay, but that may not work for a student like you, Melissa, who is like, once I get started, I'm just, the ideas are flowing and I'm going. That wouldn't benefit you to stop and do your neat little outline, because you're more productive. Your words just flow. I do this thing where I categorize writers type A, type B, and type C. You're my type B writer, right? The ideas, once they start flowing, like there's no stopping you, and it's like you can't be contained, right? You just got to get it all out and then go back and kind of rein it in, organize it, make sense of it. And so, that would probably be a good way for you to research. Plus, if your topic is relatively new, and not that women in ministry is new, but this in today's society where we've got this heightened push for feminism, you'll see that carry over into the Christian space, right? Women in ministry. And so that's kind of a relatively new argument. And so you may, like you said, you may have trouble finding sources. And so when that happens, what did you end up doing? How did you end up finding sources?
So what I did is I learned how to use the library altogether
Right.
and I was on
Hmm.
Alta a little bit. I used
Hmm.
Gale and contacts. I found sources, like 22 of them. And what I did
Right.
was I
That's
pulled
awesome.
sentences out of like even if it was one sentence that
Yep.
was what I was looking for because a lot of the
Hmm.
information wasn't what I was looking for. Like my flip-flop was why it's true that they shouldn't be in
Right.
leadership. So trying to find that, I wound up going to Google Scholarly and
Right.
I was asking it questions. And then it pulled
Yeah.
up like two articles, two peer review articles. I just used them
Mhm.
and I read
Right.
what they read and I like paraphrased what they said and then I added
Hmm.
like I reworded it, to like my
Right.
understanding, but not like talking from myself, like as if I was talking from them because the
Right.
professor said don't use your opinion. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that's an issue for me because I will write according to what I know, according to like the
Right.
revelation I get or whatever, and I can flow like that. It's very hard for me to work like this and write off of what
Yeah.
other people have already written and said.
Right.
It's
Right.
very hard
Yes.
and I frustrate myself. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wound up using two pieces of peer reviews that I got from Google Scholarly, and I just went along and I highlighted. And then,
Yeah.
like what made sense to me, I kind of paraphrased what they were already saying and
Right.
then cited
Right.
that they were saying that, but kind of in my own words. So, and I
Yeah.
was late with it. I submitted it last night because it's taken me a long, I'm doing it for this class and my psych class. Like in my psych
Right.
class, I'm writing about a diagnosis, a disorder diagnosis, a treatment plan. So I have a lot of
Hmm.
research and writing going on, and I overwhelmed
Yeah.
myself where I fell back. And so
Yeah.
I
Well,
submitted
but
it late.
also, yeah, but also I think it's difficult too with that flip-flop essay
Yeah.
because um I mean that is an exercise. It feels like an exercise in, I don't want to say futility, but like you're arguing something that you don't
Yeah, I
believe
don't
in,
believe.
like you're like, I do not feel this way,
I'm like,
and yet how do I
this is
argue
not.
this?
Women should not stay
Right,
in their
right.
lane and
But
be under a glass ceiling. And so I'm writing that last night and I'm like, this is so cliche. Like, no, but then I'm like, as I was writing that, I was highlighting so much that will go into my argument at the same time. So the the sources that I found, they could be used for both. And I
right.
was like, oh, hopefully this all flows together. So, yeah, so we'll
Yes.
see.
Well, and I think, yeah. And another thing that I always tell my students is like, so doing the flip-flop essay and having to argue something that is like the opposite of what you feel, um, it's forcing you to consider the opposition, right? The opposing
Mhm.
viewpoints. And so I don't ever want someone to argue something with blinders on, right? And refuse to at least acknowledge that there's other opinions out there. So it really strengthens your argument when you acknowledge and you consider what other people say, whether or not you agree with them, right? You don't have to agree with them at all. What that really does is strengthen your argument. So when you go to write that argument essay and it is your perspective now, um, I've really, it just solidifies your argument, now that you've looked at the opposition. And so that's kind of what I always find when I have my students do that. So, and I'm hopeful for that for all of you as well. So what about like Regina, when you did you run into struggling to find sources as well?
So I d not as much because my thesis was my true opinion is that we should have like free healthcare in America. So my
Right.
flip-flop was arguing to not have free healthcare. Like I based it on capitalism. So I was able to like find stuff on how America was founded on like our roots are on capitalism and free market and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
once I found like the
Mm-hmm.
right thing to search for, I was able to kind of like skew the, it didn't have to necessarily be towards healthcare. It was about capitalism. And there was a ton of stuff about
Right.
capitalism. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And see, and that's the beauty of it too, is that when you start looking in these databases and you're like, oh, I can't find anything. And it's
Mhm.
like sometimes all you need is like to turn your head this way,
Keyword. Yep.
toward like you
Mhm.
weren't finding it on this, but you went, oh, capitalism. And then, oh wow, look at all these sources I have. So,
Mhm.
and that's the beauty of learning to go through these, databases and search terms and all that. So it all, you just get better with it as you do it and as you write these thesis statements. Um, and really that's kind of my biggest takeaway for you guys is that when you're writing these thesis statements, again, you just want to make sure it's debatable and it's narrow, right? Those are like the two biggest keys here. And I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed with all these things that it should be that it kind of paralyzes us when we go to writing it. And we want to kind of try to encompass everything on our topic. But I always say like your topic and your opinion or your viewpoint and why you feel that way. Those three things, that's the equation that really makes up that thesis statement, right? It's debatable, and it's narrow. Easy peasy, right? Yeah.
So now my question is, and this may be a question for Professor Burkert, but um, should I narrow my true thoughts down even further? Because it doesn't necessarily, I feel like free healthcare in America might be too broad, do you think?
Hmm.
Or should I
It
should
very well
narrow,
could be.
yeah.
It very well could be, especially I can't remember what's the required length of the argument paper.
For the argumentative essay, it is 8 to 10. The flip-flop it only had to
Okay.
be 2 pages.
Okay, that's yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. I thought the flip-flop essay was really short.
Yeah.
So I mean, you might find that. I know 8 to 10 pages sounds like a lot, but like it really isn't, like especially like Melissa, you're like, once I start writing, the thoughts just flow. I mean, you're probably a student, like you're 15 pages in and you're like, I haven't even gotten to half my points here. So you might find that, Regina, that is broad. And you could even narrow it down more specifically to, I don't know exactly how you've worded your thesis statement, but maybe you're looking at free healthcare for a certain group of people.
That's what I was thinking. So I did go through breast cancer a couple years ago. And so I was
Mhm.
thinking, well, maybe I should just relate it to like for cancer patients or something like that.
Yeah,
And but is that now a true flip-flop? Because I didn't say any of
right.
that in my flip-flop. So I don't know if that will count.
Right. And that may be, like you said, a question just to run it by
Yeah.
Professor Burkert just to make sure,
Hmm.
because like I said, I don't want to speak for her.
Right, right.
But knowing her, I think that she would say you could absolutely probably narrow that down.
Okay.
It kind of just depends on, like I said, the parameters of the essay requirements and whatnot.
Okay.
So,
Makes sense.
and keep in mind too that these thesis statements, when you write them, like they're not carved in stone like the Ten Commandments, right? You can go back and because sometimes you'll write a thesis statement and then start writing the body of your essay, and you realize that, oh, like this isn't going where I thought it was going to go. I need to go back and revise my thesis statement, and that's okay, right? That is okay to do. Don't, I have so many students that come back to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to redo my whole essay because it's, totally different than what I wrote in my thesis. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Are you on topic? Are you still meeting the guidelines of the essay writing prompt? If you are, it's easier to revise that thesis statement to then reflect where your writing or your argument is going rather than, revise the whole essay. So just keep that in mind too, right? Not set in stone. It can be revised. And, your essay should be revised several times before you submit it. We don't just want to, turn in the first thing we write. You might have, like I spelled on instead of one. So
Which is actually what
you
we
got to
ended up
revise
doing
those.
because none of us realized that the rough draft that was due was actually supposed to be the final draft.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mine was definitely a rough draft. It was not a
Yeah,
Yeah.
final.
mine too, girl. I was up to like
Yeah.
2:30 writing it. 4 o'clock the
Yeah.
one day. I'm like,
We were just talking about this last week about how that it wasn't super clear and it was like,
yeah.
oh, it's like it's a rough draft, but it's like the final copy or the final draft of that flip
Yeah,
flop. So yeah, that's she said everybody like it took everybody by surprise. So
yeah.
it wasn't just you guys. It was across the board. Yeah.
I
But
think
yeah, I
too
mean,
with I think like what you just said about revising the thesis instead, because I was gonna ask, okay, well, how do you keep a flow? And then what if your flow veers off? And I didn't think about just
mhm,
going back and reframing the thesis paragraph, that statement, and just reframing
yeah,
that instead of,
yeah,
oh, I got off topic and I veered.
mhm,
And now I got to start all
right.
over and not knowing where to start. So I'm going to consider that because I think that
Yeah.
will be
Well,
my
and
problem.
yeah, yeah. Well, and one thing to consider when you do that, right? I always caution my students that if that happens and you go and you're like, ooh, I'm going this direction and I thought I was going to be going this direction. You still want to make sure that you're like, because sometimes we get off topic and we're off topic, right? It has nothing to
Hmm.
do with what we were being asked to write.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're still within those guidelines of the assignment. I don't see that as much with college students. Like my college students are pretty good about like recognizing that, but I still always kind of caution people just it's revisable, but don't totally change the assignment.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you don't think about doing that because you think, well, I've submitted this. It's my thesis statement. It's set in stone. Like it's God. He carved the Ten Commandments in the stone, and now this is what it
Yeah.
is. And you can revise it. You can. So, and talk to your professors about that. Communication with your professors goes a long way. I'm sure that having that ongoing conversation about it with them, they'd be like, absolutely. So don't be afraid to reach out. You've got who do you have Burkert as well, Melissa?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. She's
Yeah.
wonderful. So
Yeah,
I mean
she
they
is.
all are,
She
but
is.
yeah, yeah.
Um, um,
Um,
so in closing the paper, and maybe I might be getting the two assignments mixed up right now. Um, at the end, when we close the conclusion, is it supposed to
mhm.
be like our thesis statement again, like revised a little bit,
So
or was
typically,
that for the annotated?
yes. So
Okay.
well, okay. So again, I would funnel this through Professor Burkert just to double check. If it's kind of the standard structure of an argument essay or an essay in general, the thesis statement is restated in your conclusion, but not
Okay.
repeated.
Okay.
So
That
you would
that's
kind of
that's kind of what
rephrase
I was
it.
asking. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I
Yeah.
was asking. Like,
So it's
yeah.
not a regurgitation, from the introduction, but it's just like a reminder that, this was the main point of my essay. Um, like I said, you want to pass that through Professor Burkert to make sure.
Yeah.
But
No,
typically
she did
that's what the
she did
professors will
mention
have you
that
do.
today. She mentioned it today
Okay.
also, like while she was talking about the annotated bibliography and stuff that
Hmm.
we were talking about today. But I was like, wait, did I hear
Hmm.
that right? And because
Yeah.
in 100, in Land 100, I didn't close. My conclusion didn't have
Right.
my thesis. And I would, so
Yeah.
like in 101, I think it's just like a more in-depth to writing. Like there's just a little bit
Hmm.
more that, 100 didn't, um,
Yep.
it didn't require, or like it, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it wasn't as important. So, and then I always
Yes.
say, well, we didn't have to do that in 100. And then I'm like, but this ain't 100, Mel. This is 101.
Right.
So,
Right.
just do,
Right. Well, and you're seeing that.
yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing that 101 is building on those skills that you learned in 100,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
in 100, you're like, this is step one. So we're going to do this. And then in 101, it's like, okay, now that we have this foundation,
Mhm.
we're going to start fine tuning and, we're going to start doing this with our conclusion. And you'll see that each course that you take will kind of build upon things that you've
Another.
previously learned. So,
Okay.
and that's kind of the beauty of it. You're like, oh wait, I got this. Like I learned this back in 100.
Yeah.
So,
So it's cool. Like those little reminders and stuff. But I just wanted, I
mhm.
like, I wasn't retaining everything. Plus, at the end of class, I was like getting to work and stuff. So I missed, but
Yeah,
I know that's what
yeah,
she said. And so I want to find a way to add that in because I remember in my first paper, we didn't have to do that. So I want, that was something that
yeah,
stuck out to me. Like make sure you reframe that in your conclusion. Like you're not going to say the exact same
right,
thing, but you're going to reframe it. So yeah. Okay.
right, right. And I'm not sure what she has you guys do as far as contents of the conclusion. One one thing I always tell my students across the board is that like, especially in an argument essay, you don't want to just summarize your argument in the conclusion. Like the conclusion is where you restate your thesis, but then it's okay, so what? Like
Yeah.
what do you want the reader to do? Like what's the next step? And so that's always is that something that she's talked about as well in your conclusion?
Hmm.
I'm not sure if they do that in okay.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, she's really expressive about the whole argument being that,
yeah.
like, capture the people's attention, capture the
Hmm.
reader's attention, the audience attention, and take them there.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so the ending would have to be like, The Big Bang Theory. So,
Right.
so
Right.
I know,
Right.
sorry, the way
You
that
want to
my
take
mind
them,
clicks with it, yeah. And the way I
right.
reframe
You want
what
to
she's
take them on that
saying.
journey. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. And be like, okay, now here's what I want you to do with this. Now that you know
Hmm.
this, go,
Yeah.
go be fruitful and multiply. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it sounds like you guys both have a good grasp of just kind of the foundation behind this argument essay. Um, Again, the flip-flop essay, I think doing that first is genius because it forces you're doing the hard work at the beginning. You're
Right.
getting all those like bugs worked out about how you feel, and then you can go into your argument essay going, okay, I've argued the opposition and I know that's not my opinion. So ready or not, here I come, on my
Yeah.
own argument. So yeah. Well, do you guys have any other questions for me before we leave here tonight? You guys have been wonderful, and you guys have asked awesome questions. So I
Thank
appreciate
you
you
for your
coming very much.
time.
I think you did a
Yeah.
great job for this being your first time. So good luck with your future
Thank you.
ventures.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time
I know.
and having like evening hours. I know like it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some days it's hard. Like my
Yeah.
work schedule it fluctuates, and
Yes.
some days I'm, working till midnight or 1 in the morning, and then other days I'm off by 6 or 7. But
Yeah.
it's an adjustment to try to fit all this in. So I
Oh yeah.
appreciate the classes, even like I have to get on while I'm at work, but I
Yeah.
just have a downtime real quick, but then like sometimes my camera has to go off, but I'm listening,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I did want
yeah.
to
Oh
mention
yeah.
too, I know that I guess when you may be on two different screens, you were like, "Oh, sorry guys. We couldn't it looked the same. It looked normal to us on our end. Our
Oh,
view."
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Okay. Okay, that's really actually helpful. I was like moving you guys around right and
No.
left so I could see, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Okay.
I figured you didn't know, so I just wanted to make sure yeah, I told you that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, next time I'll just keep it to myself that I'm moving
Yep.
everybody. So, I mean, I have
Awesome.
experience with Zoom, but sometimes
Yeah.
these things are like I don't know. You
Yeah.
just don't know the ins and outs of them. So,
Yep.
yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. And again, if you have questions, schedule an appointment with the Ally Center, right? If you want somebody to just go over a draft or whatever, there are so many people available and they're all wonderful. And we have nighttime hours. We're open until 7. So somebody is there, I believe, Monday through Friday. Like we stack our hours. So somebody is there until 7 p.m. So in the online space. So thank you guys so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you. You
God bless.
too.
Bye.